Okay, so you ready for this?
Always ready for a good deep dive. What are we looking at today?
Today we're diving into First Kings.
First Kings.
It's a book like jam-packed with drama. I mean, you got power struggles, kings rising and falling, and prophets like always popping up. It's a wild ride.
It is. It is. And it's incredible how relevant it still is, thousands of years later, and we're still grappling with the same questions about leadership and faith and consequences.
Yeah, it really makes you think. So we start with, King David, this like larger than life figure. Everyone knows David.
Right, the slayer of Goliath, the shepherd
Yeah,
king.
exactly.
Yeah.
But here he is at the end of his reign. He's getting old. And instead of this like smooth transition of power, well, gets messy.
Yeah, it's not the peaceful handover he probably hoped for.
Right. His sons are all like fighting for the throne.
Mm.
Amnon, Absalom, and then finally
Yeah.
Solomon.
It's a real power struggle for sure. And it's interesting because it goes beyond just, who's going to be king. It reveals these like underlying tensions in the kingdom.
Oh, so you're saying it's like a sign of things to come.
Absolutely. I mean, you see ambition, you see betrayal, you can almost feel the instability that's going to eventually lead to the kingdom's downfall. It's all right there in the family drama.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. So, okay, Solomon eventually takes the throne, and of course he's famous for his wisdom.
Oh, yeah, the classic story of Solomon choosing wisdom over wealth and power. It's pretty inspiring when you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. And then there's the whole building of the first temple in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
This huge undertaking. But I remember reading about the Queen of Sheba visiting him.
Mhm.
And it wasn't just like a friendly drop-in, was it?
Not at all. I mean, the Queen of Sheba travels all the way from what's now modern-day Yemen to see Solomon. It's a massive journey,
Right.
and it just shows you how far his reputation had spread. She's drawn by his wisdom, his wealth, the magnificence of his kingdom.
So it's like a testament to Solomon's success.
Absolutely. It's a peak moment. You could say it's a golden age.
But golden ages don't last forever.
That's true.
I mean, the kingdom eventually splits, right?
Yeah.
So did Solomon make some mistakes along the way? What happened?
Well, it's a bit complicated. You see, Solomon achieved incredible things, but his policies also laid the groundwork for the division. For example, his huge building projects. Impressive as they were, they required heavy taxes, forced labor.
Yeah, I can see how that would cause some resentment.
Exactly. And then there's his accumulation of wealth, his many wives. Now, this was pretty common practice back then, but it still led to discontent among the people.
So even though he was wise, he maybe wasn't always the most sensitive ruler.
You could say that.
And then his son, Rehoboam, he doesn't exactly help matters, does he? Didn't he basically say, "My father whipped you with whips, but I will whip you with scorpions"?
He did. Not the most tactful response to the people's concerns.
Yeah, talk about a PR nightmare.
Totally. And his lack of wisdom, his lack of empathy, it was really the final straw. The northern tribes, feeling ignored and overburdened, they break away. They form their own kingdom, Israel. And Rehoboam is left ruling over the southern kingdom, Judah. It's a major turning point in the story.
Wow. Okay, so now we've got two kingdoms, and I imagine things get even more complicated. So what are the key differences between Israel and Judah at this point?
Well, their leadership is different right from the start. Israel goes through a series of kings. Many of them are portrayed as corrupt, as unfaithful to God. Judah, on the other hand, they maintain the Davidic line.
Right, so they still had that connection to King David.
Exactly. That gave them a sense of legitimacy and continuity. And of course, the temple remained in Jerusalem, which was in Judah. That further cemented their religious and political importance.
But even with those differences, both kingdoms had these like larger-than-life figures. The prophets, they're constantly popping up, calling out injustice, challenging the kings. I mean, who could forget Elijah calling down fire from heaven?
Oh, yeah, that showdown with the prophets of Baal.
Talk about a dramatic entrance.
It's an incredible story. And it highlights the role of the prophets. They were God's messengers, speaking truths to power. They weren't afraid to confront kings, to call the people back to righteousness.
Figures like Elijah and Elisha, they're pretty inspiring.
They are, and they remind us that real power comes from God, not from earthly rulers.
But it's also kind of sad because both kingdoms, even with the prophets' warnings, they end up, well, spiraling downward.
Yeah, it's a tragic trajectory.
We see internal conflicts, corruption, idolatry, and it all leads to disaster. Israel falls to the Assyrians, and the people are scattered. Even Judah, although they have moments of revival, they eventually get conquered by the Babylonians.
It's a sobering reminder that even the most powerful nations can fall.
And it seems like that downfall starts when they lose sight of what truly matters.
Exactly. First Kings really shows us the impact of choices, both individual choices and choices made by leaders. It's a story about power, about the dangers of unchecked power. It's about the importance of wise counsel, and ultimately, it's about the enduring power of faith.
So to recap, we've seen kings rise and fall, the consequences of good and bad decisions, and the prophets, always trying to guide people toward righteousness. It's a lot, but it's all incredibly relevant today, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what makes First Kings so powerful. It's not just ancient history. It's a reflection on leadership, on faith, on what it means to be human.
It really makes you think.
Yeah. As you go about your day, maybe consider this. How do we use power? How do we respond to challenges? How do we make difficult choices? The stories of First Kings, they offer timeless wisdom for navigating the complexities of life, even today.
That's a great takeaway.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. I think we all learned a lot today.
My pleasure. Always happy to dive into these stories.
Until next time.
Until next time.